Hello and welcome to TransForm Tuesday. I'm Dave McCormick, VP of Products and Services here at Alpha Software. Today I'm joined by Sarah Mitchell, as I am most Tuesdays, who's head of our documentation department, but I'm also joined here today by Greg Bohling, who's our VP of Services. Now, Greg has been doing some really cool stuff with TPL, the TransForm programming language. He showed a little bit off at this at our recent DevCon, which was a week and a half ago. And showed a really kind of cool example that just pushed TPL so way beyond what you could expect TPL to do that we just thought it would be kind of an interesting session for TransForm Tuesday. Also, we wanted to open it up for questions to see if people were wondering how it was put together and how to make it all work. So before I go any further, just want to remind you that you can always type questions into the questions box of the GoToWebinar control panel. So let's get started. Hello, Greg, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. How are you?
Fantastic. I'm doing great. Thank you. I'm going to make you the presenter.
Okay.
And I'm going to drop off camera and save a little bandwidth. And I'm looking at the screen which says TransForm, and you've got your phone broadcasting. Looks like through.
I do.
Terrific.
So yeah, as Dave had said, we did some things at DevCon that were maybe a little impractical, but definitely show some of the things you can actually do with TPL within TransForm. So I thought just as a quick overview, I'd show a couple of them and then see if there are questions on kind of how this stuff works and how it was built. So the first one I just wanted to show off is a Tic-Tac-Toe game that's done all in TransForm and TPL. So in this case, you can play Tic-Tac-Toe with your friends. And if you're not very good at it, you can have a winner at Tic-Tac-Toe, and it will tell you who they are, and then we can restart. So this is using some form data down here at the bottom to sort of keep track of my game board and scoring the columns across and or the rows across, the columns down, and the two diagonals. We keep track of when X plays in a spot, then we'll add one to each column and row and diagonal that X is in. And when O plays on a spot, then we subtract one from each of those. And so if we get to a total of 3 or -3, that's how we know that somebody, won the game. So that's kind of, and you can see here also the game board in this case is just a string of characters that we use some TPL to, each character represents one of the squares. And so we know that, what's been played or if it hasn't been played, and we can then keep track of sort of the number of turns and all of that. So within TransForm itself, the actual, make this a little bigger. The actual, each of these cells is part of a 3-column layout. And we do an if command to decide which of a bunch of buttons should we show. So we have some TPL in these if conditions that determine, is anything in this space or not? So there's a function that looks into the field, and then whose turn is it? That's just, this form field. And then if it's X's turn, then we show a button that X can play. And if it's not, then we check and we see if it's O's turn and they can play. Then we show a button like right here, which just has the label with the lowercase o that we saw. Actually, I can pull that over here so we can see all this. Right. And then similarly, if we've already played, we have a button, is there an X in that space? Then we have a red button with a capital X and an O. And then if it's none of those, then we have our little default button. So that's kind of an easy way to sort of leverage the if else then, sort of capabilities within TransForm for your forms to have some conditional interfaces and things like that. In this case, there's a a block of these for each of the 9 squares. So it does, kind of get a little long. And then I just have a section here where we've actually put the fields that I'm using to track the game board and all of that down here at the bottom, right? So that you can hide it if you didn't want to see. So there's an if that just says, hey, is that field diag is that 1, then show all this stuff, otherwise just hide it, right? So the TPL actually in this, there's not really a lot of code in here. We have a function to sort of set the initial state, reset the game, which is this restart game button, we'll call that, and reset my array and board. We have some functions that we use to test, and all we're really doing is looking at that string and seeing is there a dash in that spot, then the square is available and we can, that sets the right button. When we actually press the X or the O button, there's just a little bit of code here that puts an X in that string in the right place, sets my scoring array, 1 or -1, depending on whose turn it is, and sets the next turn. So then there's just some functions for doing those, simple things. And then one to determine, going through that array, are we at 3 or -3? Then we have a winner of X or O, and we have a function that just pops up that little message and sets the number, turns so you can't click any more buttons. So that just kind of demonstrates. Here's some helper functions as well, just to determine if I played square number 3, which rows are it in, which row is it in, which column is it in, which are the 2 diagonals, and then just a bunch of function calls for the buttons is all that at. So that's sort of the first thing that we showed at DevCon. I don't know, Dave, if there are any questions on tic-tac-toe or if I should go.
There are no questions so far, so I guess you can
Okay.
move on. If you do have questions, again, type them into the questions box.
So yeah, so being able to do tic-tac-toe led me to think, and Sarah had actually asked me, she thought maybe a more sophisticated game would be fun. So I actually did TransForm Quest, which is a dungeon game here. And in this case, we have our little character, our little knight, and there are various creatures that we have to navigate in order to get to the chalice and win. So I have left, right, up, down buttons that will move me in the 4 cardinal directions. So if I hit the right button, it moves me over to the next cell. We do have creatures that block exit. So if I try to go back left, it will tell me that that direction is blocked. And then we have some action buttons that we add down here, so I can search this room. And when I search it, then it reveals that there are some things hidden there, and that has popped up, the ability to get a key and a potion. And if I want to maybe search this room, I can find a chest. And so since I have a key, now I can open the chest, and that tells me that I get some more keys and potions and gold. But of course now, because I've got walls and a door that's blocked by a spider, I can't move, so I have to actually battle my way out. So what we've got here is my 4 creatures in this room and the hit points they have, and so now I can pick which ones to attack. So if I try to attack the one up above, you can see I did some damage, but then everybody else did some damage to me. So I can drink some of my potions and hope maybe I can get a healing one. In this case, I got a strength potion, another strength potion. That one was water, so it doesn't do anything. There we go, I got a little bit of health back. So now I can try to get, so I've attacked the top spider there. Now I've opened that exit up so I can get out of this battle and I can actually move back up here. And my objective is, of course, still to get down to the chalice. So I have to figure out how do I get down there without dying. So we'll try to get some, I better drink a potion. There we go. Try to get through these spiders here. Now I've got a ghost. Let's see what I got here. Hey, there we go. I have Rindle, the red dragon from Atari 2600 Adventure that I have to fight my way through.
I remember that guy.
Better try that. And then when I get to the chalice, I'm the winner of TransForm Quest. And then I have a button that resets the whole board. There's 3 different game boards in here. We can search for things and we can navigate around. And if I go find myself a battle to lose, let's see how I do here. If I take a lot of damage, you can see Rindle is quite potent and can deal a lot of damage, and so I've lost the game there. And of course, it prevents me from tapping any of the buttons or anything. So that one is a form that actually has absolutely no form fields in this entire form definition. Everything is done in TPL using global variables. But what I do have in here is an HTML section that's just calling a TPL function that actually generates all of my graphics and draws those out on the screen. Then I have a section here using the layout, right? It's a 3-column layout button, like the up button is in the second position, right? So that puts it, in the right places. The action buttons down here appear and disappear depending on some functions. So, if there's a creature that I can fight, then this button will appear. If I haven't searched the room yet, then there's a button that'll appear. If there's something for me to open or get, then those buttons appear.
Now you're doing some kind of advanced if statements here. I mean, if I look at your if, often people say, if question 7 equals yes, then display some more information. Here you're actually calling a function and a function that you've written called can battle or can get or can open.
Right.
So
TPL
if statements can,
it can be any valid TPL that returns true or false, essentially. So a value or a not a value is true and false in TPL. So any of those will tell me, can I do this or not? So in this case, I actually have a global variable that keeps track of my X and Y position on the grid. It's a 3x3 grid. Mm-hmm. So that helps me keep track of where I am. And then based on where I am, I have functions that'll look that up and say, okay, can I actually search here? Have I searched this area yet or not? And if I haven't, then it'll let me and show the button. And in this case, if I already searched it, this will say, null value, and it will just show me this little search thing just so that I know that I've already searched that room. So as an example here, if I search this room, now you can see I got my searched, indicator here. I don't know if I do that. I don't know why our server wants to be on top of everything today. But so, and then the battle screen is actually a different page. So I'm using a page.
And is it also an HTML block?
I very cleverly set the color to white so that you don't actually see it. That's the only way I was able to figure out how to do that, so that it only shows up using the battle button. But actually, if I were in a cell that didn't have a battle, I could get to that screen by tapping down here, I think. Yeah. But the effect is the same, right? This button just uses a go to target. So I've got a target defined here. There's a TPL function that was added in the last release called go to target. So it takes me to this inside this page. when I click that button. Similarly, the end battle button in the middle of all this, wherever I
So
put that.
to be clear, the target, does that take you to a particular control on a page?
It takes you to a target command. So this is actually a command in the list of commands here, define target.
Yep.
And so you just give it a name, and then you can reference that. So there's buttons in here you can pick actually that are built in that says go to target.
So
In which case you say main. Yeah.
If I had a long page that had, I don't know, 100 fields on it, and I stuck that target command around 3/4 of the way down, would clicking a go to target or initiating a go to target, would that take me 3/4 of the way down through the page to that section?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it will
Oh,
take
cool.
you to wherever the target is. So, and in this case, I have one defined at the very, very top, right? So that's for my end battle to get back to the main screen. And then I have one in the battle page so that battle button, and I will go into the TPL here in a second, and I can show that. That will take you there. So, and then really most of this is just a bunch of buttons, action buttons. There's one for attacking each cardinal direction and drinking potions and moving left and right. These are all just buttons that I use with some colors sometimes to try to sort it out. But really the driver of all this is a lot of TPL code in here.
Yeah.
So the main thing is that the game board itself is basically a 2-dimensional array of objects. And I can go down to the bottom here where we kind of build some of them. If I can find it. Here we go. Yeah. So in this case, we have a room array as a global. We make a second array in cell 0 so that makes it a 2-dimensional array. In this case, I'm using it as Y, X, even though everything else is X, Y, because I wrote this in a hurry for DEF CON. So 0, 0 is basically row 0, column 0. And then within that is an object. That object has attributes like which exits are there in that room. Has the room been searched? Is there a potion in it? Is there a key in it? There's an array of creatures in terms of what's in there and what their attributes. Each creature is an object itself that we use. Which exit is the creature standing in front of? All of that is in this giant data structure.
I see.
And in this
So that's how you told it how the board should be set up with to begin with.
Right. And so as I developed this, I started with just one, and I hand rolled it, and then I created a second one for fun somewhere, and then I made some helper functions to make it a little bit easier for me to sort of create a creature, right? And sort of try to make that a little bit easier. So some helper functions to return, the creature object depending on what type I want and what exit. What's in a chest is an array of objects that tell me, what's in here and how many there are, things like that. So that represents the whole, sort of the game board. And then there's a couple other variables that represent the location and then the attributes of the player. So hit points, how many keys you have, things like that. So when you click one of these buttons, there's a whole slew of obviously, button commands here that do things. So if I'm, a lot of times I have a function that basically says is the game over or not, so that I can determine if the button needs to actually be able to do something or not. So here, for example, we have a battle button. This is the on button for this battle button. It does a quick check to make sure the game isn't over, and then it just calls the TPL function go to target, and it goes to that battle target, which takes me to that other page. Similarly, going back to the main, you know, if I open chess, I've got functions that I create where I'm passing the player's location. Say, hey, I want to open a chest. I'm going to get a key. In this case, I added potions later, so it actually gets keys and potions. You know, there's an attack function that we say which direction, you know, when attacking, you know, here's my drink. And then the movement ones are a little more complicated, but they essentially have to look in that room at that location, what exits are in the room, and then is, you know, the direction I'm trying to go is north with this one, right? This is the move north button. So does it have north as an exit in my list of exits? Is something in the way, in which case it's looking for creatures that aren't dead. And then says, okay, if I'm, you know, it's not blocked and the exit's there, then we just update the location, right? So I'm going north. So I'm just subtracting 1 from the Y location. And then we do a quick check. Does this room have the chalice in it? And if so, then I've won the game. So now my status is winner. And that's when it pops that message up. So that's sort of how those things work.
That's very cool. So
really in here, the other main thing, just, you know, we showed that function that gets called in the HTML block.
Right.
A bunch of like how to do this, you know, can I do this, can I do that? These are the checks that we use in those if statements, right? Is there something, you know, to fight in that direction? I'm passing the location and which exit I'm trying to go to. And, you know, we look to see if there's creatures in there and if it matches that exit and is it still alive? And then yes, we'll go, you know, we'll go try to attack it. But the main game board is just this render game board function. And all we're actually doing is building up a big HTML SVG string that then gets sent. And so the transform filler will then render all that as HTML and SVG.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit about that. Are you using SVG for the little icons, but HTML to sort of draw the table? Are you using SVG for everything and putting
everything to this point is SVG.
Oh, okay.
And this line down here is actually HTML for simplicity's sake. There are text commands. I use the text thing in the battle screen, right? So do I have a creature in here? So I use SVG text to place the hit points for the creature there in the middle. But other than that, this is just regular.
Cool. And so, SVG is one long string of characters, basically, right? I mean,
yeah. So in this case, I create a lot of helper functions to actually generate the SVG. It's a little annoying because you have to escape all your quotes and everything. So I usually do it in small chunks so that I don't end up with some really gnarly function that's just so broken it takes me 3 hours to debug it through the and I do use the tester for that. Generally what I'll do is and I think actually real quick if I open this up, let me find, not here, but no, actually maybe it was in there. Oh, I can't find it. Never mind. Okay. Anyway, I create a, yeah, I don't see it yet. I don't know where I put it. Sorry. I create my SVG in HTML and sit there and play around with it till I get what I want. You know, so drawing a spider and SVG. And then I use that, I copy and paste that into functions. And then I'll usually run it through the tester just because it'll crash the first time every time because I missed escaping a quote or something.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah.
So, but essentially what I have here is like I have a function that basically opens my SVG tag with the right window size and everything. And then I call functions like draw all the walls, so I'm passing it the room here in this case, because I thought maybe I could have more than one 9x9 grid at someday. And then I place my little guy at a location and what color he is. So I could change that, for example. Thought maybe I'd have multiplayer at some point, so need different colors. Here's a function that just says, okay, now go through the rooms and draw all the contents. And I'm just adding these to a return string. And I like to do this because then in the tester, what I can see is this actually gets filled in and I can figure out what's going on. You could just say return this and that and that and that, and it would work, but you wouldn't be able to see in the debugger like what was going on. Here we're checking to see if there's a winner, then we draw a winner. Here we see if they've died, and then we say game over. This closes out my SVG tag, and then this is the stat line down at the bottom, which is just text and some line breaks and things. And we have a similar function for the battle screen. In that case, what we're really doing is just changing our window to whichever of these cells I'm in. And so it's the exact same SVG sort of positioning. We just kind of zoom in, which is just a little SVG trick. So we're just starting in different coordinates with a different size, and it scales everything automatically, which is what SVG does. So just as a quick example, like here's the status line. So I have a global variable called message, and I just get stuck to the end of this, which lets all the functions just dump something into message, and it'll select when it's blocked. And then when it redraws the screen, it'll show you that message and then clear it out in other places. So a good example would be, here's my night, right? So I pass it which of the 9 cells is it in, and then the night is always in the lower left-hand corner. So that means I have a very simple way of translating it when I redraw it. So when I move over, I can, just do a simple offset to know where to put it. And the same with the chests are always in the lower right-hand corner. The chalice is always in the middle. The creatures are always on the cardinal directions. So if you divide one of these into 9 squares, and then the key is always on the upper left and the potion always in the upper right. That makes it a little bit simpler to sort of offset it for each location I need to be in. So typical for these drawing functions, and I've got one for the knight and one for the spider and the chest and all of this, is that I figure out I'm on, X and Y, which of these grid squares. So if I'm in 1 by 1, then I know these are 900 units across. So this is 300, so I can just multiply by 300 in the right directions to know which square I'm in and where to start. And then each actual drawing, has 3 or 4 or 5 SVG elements that make it up. In the case of the knight, there's a rectangle for the head. There's a rectangle a rectangle for the feet, I think, and a path that draws the little pentagon home plate shield thing, and then another path that draws the sword. So, and those could be, they're rendered in the order that you show them. So you can see in the case, I don't know if it's too easy to see, the shield actually goes over the top of the other elements. So that's actually the last thing drawn, so that I can have a mess in the middle and it just gets hidden. The spider is the same way, right? So the circle gets drawn after the legs, so that it goes over the top of it. The eyes get drawn after the circle. Otherwise, they would be behind
You
it.
wouldn't see the eyes. Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Hey, Greg,
So,
thank you very much. This is really well beyond what I think people would even think to begin to do. You could do with TPL, but it is amazing. You can do all kinds of, putting together these sort of data models on the inside and creating outputs and stuff. So while a TransForm might not be your first choice for building games, it's probably best stuck in the business realm. It does show you the possibilities that you have in creativity in building these things out. So it's a really, really cool job. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Sure.
We have run out of our time. We're out of questions. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. If you have questions, send them to tfservice@alphasoftware.com. And Greg, are you going to make this available for people who want to play with it?
Sure. Just send us a request.
Just send a request to TF Service. Cool.
Yep.
Thanks again. Take
Bye.
care, everyone. See you next Tuesday.
You bet.
Bye-bye.